I don't know what made me reach for her coat that night. It was just hanging there, draped lazily over the back of the kitchen chair, like it always was. We'd just come back from a quick dinner with her friends, and Emma was upstairs, brushing her teeth, probably scrolling on her phone between mouthfuls of mint foam. I told her I'd clean up the leftovers, and maybe I meant it. But instead of putting the takeout boxes away, I stood there, staring at her gray coat. There was something off about it. It wasn't anything dramatic. Just a small, red thread clinging to the shoulder. But it stood out like blood on snow. I reached for it before I even knew why. I plucked it gently, holding it between my fingers, rolling it like I used to do with splinters when I was a kid. And then it hit me. Emma doesn't own anything red. Not a scarf, not a blouse, not even lipstick. She says it's too bold for her complexion. So why was there a red thread on her coat? My stomach did a weird little flip. I told myself it could be from the restaurant, or maybe from someone brushing past her at the grocery store. But the second guess came too fast, too prepared. Like I'd already rehearsed what I was going to tell myself when something like this happened. I should have let it go. God, I wish I had. Instead, I went upstairs, holding that thread like it was some cursed artifact, and found her sitting on the bed, scrolling through her phone with that soft little smirk she always got when texting someone she liked. I asked, "Who's making you smile like that?" She looked up, startled. "What?" "Your phone. You're smiling." "Oh. Just Jess. She sent me that meme, you know, the one with the dog and the vacuum." I didn't laugh. I sat down next to her and laid the red thread on the comforter between us. She stared at it for a second too long. "What's that?" she asked, her voice a little too flat. "You tell me." "It was on your coat." She blinked. Swallowed. So, you don't own anything red?" There was a beat of silence. And in that beat, I swear I heard something crack. Not physically, emotionally. Some kind of barrier between us just crumbled. She let out a soft sigh and tossed her phone on the nightstand. "Are we really doing this right now, Daniel?" And just like that, I felt the shift. Not defensive. Not scared. Tired. Like she was exhausted from carrying the lie and even more exhausted from pretending to care. I asked, "Who is he?" She didn't deny it. She just said, "It's not like that." I felt my pulse slam into my ears. "Then what is it like, Emma?" "Because to me, it looks exactly like you're cheating on your husband." She looked down at her lap. "I didn't mean for it to happen." That line. That damn line. The one people say in movies when they've already torched the house and handed you the matchbook like a souvenir. I stood up, pacing. "How long?" She didn't answer. "How long?" She looked up at me. 5 months. My legs nearly gave out. 5 months. That's almost half a year. That's Thanksgiving. That's our anniversary. That's Christmas Eve when she told me she was so grateful for the life we had. I laughed. I actually laughed, and it scared even me. It wasn't joyful, it was hollow. Empty. Like air escaping a dead balloon. "Who is he?" I asked. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me." She pressed her lips together and said nothing. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time in our 5 years of marriage. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts so loud I couldn't hear anything else. Not the wind outside. Not the heater kicking on. Just the echo of her voice, "It's not like that," replaying like a broken voicemail. The next morning, I called my mom and invited her and Dad for dinner that Sunday. I didn't say why. Just that I missed them. Emma didn't say anything about it, but I could feel the tension in the air every time we passed each other in the kitchen. She was quieter than usual, tiptoeing through the house like a ghost. The guilt must have been clinging to her like that red thread clung to her coat. Sunday came fast. Too fast. I made my mom's favorite roast. Emma set the table like nothing had changed. Like we weren't sitting on a ticking bomb. Like her betrayal wasn't nestled between the salt and pepper shakers. When my parents arrived, everything felt normal. Fake normal. The kind you put on like a mask at Halloween, hoping no one notices the tear behind your eyes. My dad cracked jokes. My mom complimented the wine. Emma smiled politely. I smiled too. Too wide. Too sharp. We ate. We laughed. We chatted about work and weather and the new grocery store that opened near the freeway. And then, as the plates cleared and dessert was still warming in the oven, I said it. Flat. Plain. Like reading a grocery list. Emma's been cheating on me. My mom choked on her water. My dad looked like someone had slapped him with a brick. Emma froze. Her fork halfway to her mouth. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Crushing. Then she set her fork down. Calmly. Too calmly. Wow, she said, dabbing the corners of her mouth with her napkin. You really wanted to do this here? Now. I turned to her, voice steady. They deserve to know. My mom reached for my hand. Daniel, sweetheart, maybe we should talk. But Emma cut her off. You know what, she said, her tone suddenly sharp. Fine. Let's have this little show. Let's pretend like this is all on me. My jaw clenched. Pretend. Emma looked at my parents, then back at me, and her face shifted into something cold. Something I didn't recognize. You want to know the truth, she said. I never saw you as the one. You were always just, safe. A backup plan. You were the guy I knew would never leave. The guy who'd do anything to keep the peace. And I was tired of living a life I didn't choose. The room spun. I looked at my mother, her hand still over her mouth, and at my father, frozen in a rare silence. I was your backup plan? I asked. She didn't flinch. Yeah. And you know what? I think part of you always knew that. I didn't speak for a full minute. The words just hung there, suspended in the thick air of my parents' dining room like smoke from a house fire. You were always just, safe. A backup plan. That sentence kept echoing in my head, louder than anything else in the room. I think I was still hoping it was some kind of defense mechanism. That she'd panic, backpedal, try to say she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But Emma didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't even blink. She just sat there, shoulders squared, like she was waiting for the next round of the interrogation. You used me, I said, quietly, almost to myself. Our wedding. Our home. Everything. It was all just, what? A safety net. Emma leaned back in her chair and let out this exhausted sigh, like she was the one who'd been betrayed. Daniel, do you honestly think I married you because I was head over heels? I mean, come on. We both knew we were settling. My mom gasped. My dad pushed his chair back a few inches like he might need space to stand up or maybe punch something, though I'd never seen him get violent. Ever. And me? I just stared at her. The woman I'd once promised my whole life to. I loved you, I said. I still loved you. Up until 2 nights ago, I thought we were building something real. She shook her head, almost sadly. No, Daniel. You were building something. I was living in it. That's not the same thing. It's funny how a single moment can split your life in two, before and after. Before she said that, I still had hope, even if it was wounded and bleeding out in the corner. After she said it, that hope died. My mom stood slowly. Her voice was trembling. Emma, how could you do this to him? Emma looked at her with a strange kind of pity. Mrs. Howard, I'm sorry you had to hear it this way. But trust me, if I hadn't said it now, I would have said it eventually. I've been living a lie, and I can't do it anymore. Then why stay? I asked. Why not leave me before you cheated? Her answer was so casual it nearly made me nauseous. Because I didn't know what I wanted. And honestly, part of me was waiting to see if he would step up. I swallowed hard. Who? Who is he? She hesitated. And in that tiny pause, I knew. I knew it wasn't some stranger. Not just a nameless mistake or a passing fling. No, this person meant something. His name's Caleb, she said finally. He and we dated in college. He moved back here about a year ago. My chest tightened. Caleb. I'd heard that name before. She brought him up once when we first started dating, mentioned he was the one who got away. I thought it was harmless nostalgia. Apparently not. You reconnected, I said bitterly. And what? Picked up where you left off. Something like that. My dad finally spoke. His voice was low and hard. You've broken my son. Emma stood up and started clearing her plate. Like the conversation was over. Like it was just something to get through before coffee. You don't have to believe me, she said, scraping the remains of her mashed potatoes into the trash. But I'm not the villain here. My mom looked stunned. Then what are you? I'm human, she said flatly. I got scared. I made choices I'm not proud of. But at least I'm being honest now. I stared at the plate in front of me. The roast, perfectly sliced. The carrots she helped me dice just 2 hours ago. It all felt like a weird dream. Like we were still play-acting in a marriage that had been dead for months. And then she looked right at me and said the cruelest thing yet. You should thank me, Daniel. At least now you don't have to keep pretending I was the one. My dad's chair scraped back loudly. He stood up and pointed at the door. You need to leave. Emma blinked. Excuse me. You heard me, he said. This isn't your house. And after what you just said to my son, you're not welcome at this table. I expected her to argue. To fight. Beg for some ounce of control. But she didn't. She calmly picked up her purse, walked over to the coat rack, grabbed the same gray coat with the missing red thread, and turned back to me one last time. I'll come by for my things tomorrow. And with that, she left. Just walked out. Like it was any other Sunday night and she had somewhere better to be. The silence after the door clicked shut was unbearable. My mom moved to hug me, but I held up a hand. I need a second. I walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face. I stared into the drain like it could explain how the life I'd carefully constructed for 5 years had just unraveled in under 15 minutes. Behind me, my dad said, "You didn't deserve that, son." I didn't respond. Because part of me wasn't so sure. Maybe I'd seen it coming. Maybe I'd just ignored the signs because I didn't want to believe the woman I loved could be so calculated. So numb. I should have known, I said finally. The late nights. The excuses. The way she stopped laughing at my jokes. My mom touched my shoulder. That's not on you. People leave when they want to. Not because of what you did or didn't do. But my chest still burned with the question. Was I just easy? Was I just comfortable? They offered to stay the night, but I said no. I needed space, and honestly, I didn't want them to see the version of me that was coming next, the wreckage, the pacing, the shattered thoughts. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark. Just me, the leftovers, and a house that suddenly felt too big and too silent. I replayed everything she'd said, like a prosecutor building a case. You were always just safe. I never saw you as the one. You should thank me. Those weren't words you could unhear. They carved something out of me. Something innocent and soft. I didn't even cry. I think I was too numb. Like my body had thrown up emotional barricades to stop the flood. That night, I slept in our bed alone. Her side was still warm. Her perfume still lingered on the pillow. And I remember thinking, if I was her backup plan, what the hell does that make me now? I woke up at 4:17 a.m. Not because of a nightmare. I wish it had been a nightmare. But no. I woke up because of the silence. It was the kind that presses down on you, not peaceful, not restful. Just heavy. The absence of Emma's soft breathing beside me felt like a missing limb. Like something had been cut off in the night. Her side of the bed was cold now. I stared at the ceiling for a while, not really thinking, not really feeling, just floating inside my own skin. Then I got up. I don't know why I went into the closet. Maybe some masochistic urge to see if her things were still there, if maybe, by some miracle, this was all a bad dream, and she'd still be on her side of the bed when I blinked hard enough. But when I opened the door, there it was. Half of the closet, empty. Her shoes. Her blouses. Her dresses. Gone. She hadn't waited until morning like she said. She must have come back quietly after I fell asleep and taken only what she could carry without waking me. The quiet way she left, that was worse than any slammed door. She didn't want a scene. Didn't want closure. She just wanted out. And suddenly, I was angry. Not just at her. At myself. At the 5 years I'd spent folding her laundry, remembering her favorite takeout order, rubbing her back when she couldn't sleep, and for what? To be told I was safe. That I was the guy she settled for. I opened her side of the closet wider and stared at the empty hangers. One of her old scarves, navy blue with gold trim, had fallen to the floor. I picked it up and stared at it like it might give me an answer. Instead, it gave me a smell. Her shampoo. Vanilla and something floral. And that stupid scarf somehow hurt more than the words had. Because it reminded me of how real everything had felt, for me. I carried the scarf into the living room and sat on the couch, just holding it. I must have looked like a ghost. A guy clutching the last threads of a woman who didn't love him back. It was almost sunrise when my phone buzzed. A text. From Caleb. Yeah. Him. I didn't even know how he got my number. Sorry you had to find out like that. I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did. I stared at the screen like it was on fire. The nerve. The audacity to reach out, to apologize like that made it okay. I started typing. You didn't mean to sleep with my wife. But I deleted it. What was the point? I didn't want his guilt. I didn't want his pity. And I sure as hell didn't want a digital apology at 5 a.m. after my marriage had collapsed like a house built on sand. Instead, I blocked his number. That was the first boundary I'd set in months. It felt weirdly empowering. Later that morning, I went through the motions, coffee, shower, pretending like I had a reason to keep going. My job had given me a few days off to deal with personal matters. I think the manager assumed someone died. I guess someone did. Just not in the way he thought. By noon, I found myself sitting on the floor in the bedroom, staring at our wedding album. The irony, Emma looked happy in every photo. That blinding smile, that glimmer in her eyes. Was it all fake? Or was she faking happiness then the same way I was now faking strength? I remembered a moment from our wedding day that hadn't made it into the album. Something small. Just her grabbing my hand under the table during the reception, squeezing it 3 times, our little code for I love you. It used to mean everything. Now it meant nothing. Because somewhere along the line, that hand slipped away. By the second day, I found myself starting to talk to myself. Not out loud. Just in my head. Narrating moments. Questioning decisions. Dissecting every conversation from the past year. That time she said she was working late. Was she with him? That trip she took to see her cousin in Boston. Did Caleb go with her? That night she came home in tears and wouldn't explain why. Was it guilt, or was it regret that he hadn't left his girlfriend yet? The mind becomes a detective in heartbreak. You search for clues, for patterns. And worst of all, you blame yourself. Was I boring? Too reliable? Not ambitious enough? Too soft? I remembered this one argument we had 6 months ago. She told me I never fought for anything. At the time, I thought she was just talking about a career move. Now, I wonder if she was testing me. Trying to see if I'd fight for her. And maybe the cruelest part of all is that I would have. I would have fought for her. If she'd given me the chance. But she didn't. She let me love her with my whole heart while she stood there with one foot already out the door. By the 3rd night, I was back at my parents' place. Not because I couldn't handle being home, but because my mom texted me, and I could read between the lines. Dad's making your favorite stew. No pressure. Just come by if you're hungry. It was code for, we're worried about you. So I went. I hadn't shaved. I looked like hell. My mom didn't mention it. Just gave me a long hug and made me a bowl without asking. We ate mostly in silence until my dad finally asked, "Have you thought about talking to someone?" I looked up. "You mean a therapist? Or a lawyer?" he said softly. I hadn't. Not really. Not yet. I think part of me was still hoping I'd wake up from this. That she'd come back and say it was all a mistake. But as I sat there, surrounded by the two people who did love me unconditionally, something shifted. I didn't want her back. Not anymore. I wanted myself back. The guy who used to laugh without checking the room first. The guy who didn't flinch when he heard her name. The guy who didn't spend nights pacing and replaying every word she'd ever said. That guy. He was still in there. Somewhere. And I was going to find him again. No matter what it took. They say healing isn't linear. That sounded like a bumper sticker to me, until I lived it. 3 weeks had passed since Emma left. 3 weeks since the dinner where my world caved in under a single sentence. You were always the backup. Some days, I got up, shaved, made eggs, even jogged a few blocks and thought, okay. I'm doing it. I'm moving on. Other days, I stared at the same page of a book for an hour and couldn't remember a single word I read. Grief is strange like that. It's not loud all the time. Sometimes, it's just a soft hand tightening around your chest when you least expect it. Like in the cereal aisle. It was a Thursday afternoon. Rainy. Quiet. The kind of day where everyone at the grocery store looked like they didn't want to be seen. I was just reaching for a box of Raisin Bran when I heard a voice behind me. Daniel. I froze. There are moments when you know exactly who's speaking, even before you turn around. Their voice is written on your bones. I turned. Emma. Wearing a long beige coat, hair in a loose ponytail, no makeup, something about her felt dull. Like the shine she always carried was gone. Maybe it was always fake. Or maybe I just couldn't see it anymore. She looked surprised, maybe even a little nervous. "Hey," she said softly, like we were old friends who hadn't caught up in years. "Hey." I turned back to the shelf, grabbed the cereal. Kept my hand busy. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. I gave a half shrug. "It's a grocery store." She gave a weak smile, like she knew she deserved that. "How are you?" Now that made me laugh. I didn't mean to, but it came out, a single dry chuckle. "How am I?" I repeated, facing her. "You really want to ask that?" Her face dropped. I didn't mean. "You left me, Emma," I said quietly. "Not just left me, you gutted me in front of my parents and walked away. No explanation. No apology. And now you want to small talk in aisle 9 like we're in a Hallmark movie." I didn't mean to go off. I hadn't planned it. But it felt good. Like exhaling for the first time in weeks. She looked down. "I didn't come here to start anything." "No. You came here to buy oat milk," I said, eyeing her cart. She gave a bitter smile. "Still notice what I drink?" "Hard not to. I bought it for 5 years." Silence stretched between us like an invisible rope. Tense. Pulling. Then she said something that knocked the air out of me. "I didn't mean for it to happen that way. With Caleb." I scoffed. "You meant for it to happen in some way, though, right?" I was confused, she said, eyes suddenly wet. He made me feel seen again. Like I wasn't just surviving every day. I stared at her, unsure whether to feel pity or fury. "I saw you," I said. "Every day. I made your coffee, I packed your lunch, I rubbed your feet after double shifts. If that's not seeing someone, what is it?" Her lip trembled. "I know. I know you were good to me. That's why it's killing me." I paused. "Why, what's killing you?" She swallowed hard. "That I didn't love you the way you loved me. And I don't think I ever could." And there it was. The final nail. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was never truly mine to begin with. I stepped back, nodding slowly. Thanks for saying that now. After everything. I didn't want to lie anymore, she whispered. I owe you that much. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My silence said it all. After a moment, she turned, pushing her cart down the aisle. No goodbyes. Just distance. And I let her go. This time, for good. That night, I found myself staring at the ceiling again. But something was different. Lighter. Like a weight had shifted off my chest. She said she never loved me the way I loved her. And that stung. God, it burned. But it also gave me permission to stop trying to make sense of it. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just loved the wrong person too deeply. The next morning, I called Jared, my oldest friend. He was in Chicago, had moved there after college, and we drifted a bit. But he always picked up. Dan the man, he said, voice still groggy. Still sleeping at 9:30. I work nights now. What's up? I need to get out of town. He paused. Okay. For how long? Few days. Maybe a week. You running away or running towards something? I thought about that. Maybe both. Pack a bag, he said. You've got a couch and bad pizza waiting for you. I booked a ticket for that same day. Chicago in the spring was cold but alive. Jared's place smelled like old coffee and ambition. He lived in a studio with brick walls, a bike hanging from the ceiling, and posters of obscure bands he swore would be huge any day now. We talked until 3 a.m. that first night. I told him everything. Even the dinner. Even the backup line. He didn't try to fix it. Didn't give me some forced pep talk. He just listened. And that was the beginning of healing. Over the next few days, I walked miles through the city. I sat in coffee shops with my journal. I didn't write anything earth-shattering, just thoughts. Anger. Regret. Hope. One morning, I was in a tiny cafe in Logan Square when an old couple sat down beside me. Must have been in their late 70s. They sat in total silence, sipping tea. Not a word. And yet, you could feel the love between them. Like it pulsed in the air around them. I watched the man reach across the table and gently fix the woman's scarf. She didn't flinch. She just smiled. And I teared up. Not because I was sad. But because I still believed in that. Even after Emma. Even after being someone's backup. I still believed in being someone's first choice. I deserved that. We all do. By the time I flew home, something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, sure. But it wasn't controlling me anymore. I unpacked my bag, took a long shower, and stood in front of the mirror. Really looked at myself. Not the broken version. Not the cheated-on husband. Not the backup. Just me. Daniel Carter. 34. Good friend. Decent cook. Always remembered birthdays. Loved too hard. Trusted too much. But still standing. Still fighting. Still here. And maybe, just maybe, finally ready for whatever came next. It was a Sunday morning when the letter arrived. I'd just come back from a jog, something I was trying to make a habit. Jared had said, do something every day that has nothing to do with her. Running felt like the easiest thing. No thinking. Just breathing, pain, and pavement. When I reached my apartment, I found an envelope tucked into my doorframe. No return address. No postage. Just my name in familiar handwriting. Emma's. My stomach dropped. I stood there, frozen. Key still in my hand. The air around me shifted, like the apartment was suddenly smaller, more cramped. I stared at the envelope for at least a minute before finally stepping inside and sitting on the couch. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first. Then paced. Then sat again. And finally, with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else, I opened it. Her handwriting hadn't changed. Still round, still neat. The same curves that used to label our moving boxes and leave sticky notes on the fridge. Daniel. If you're reading this, it means I was too much of a coward to say this out loud. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth. Not the dinner table version. The real one. I swallowed hard, already bracing myself. The truth is, I was terrified. Not of you. But of myself. Of what our life had become, and how far away from myself I felt. I don't say this to justify anything. What I did was wrong. It was cruel. It was selfish. But it wasn't about Caleb, not really. It was about trying to escape a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. You always showed up, Daniel. Always. That made me feel guilty more than it made me feel loved. Isn't that strange? You were too good to me. And instead of rising to meet that, I shrank. I started resenting your steadiness, your patience. Because it reminded me of everything I wasn't. My hands were shaking now. You were never the backup. I said that to hurt you because I hated myself in that moment. I wanted to burn everything so I didn't have to face what I'd done. But you were always the constant. The safe harbor. I just couldn't see it until it was too late. I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I know I forfeited the right to come back. But I wanted you to know, somewhere deep in your bones, that you were never second choice. You were just too good for someone who didn't know how to love themselves, let alone you. I hope you find someone who meets you where you are and never makes you feel small. And if that person ever wonders who taught you how to love so well, I hope you tell them it was me, and that I finally learned from the pain I caused. Emma. I didn't cry. I expected to. Instead, I just sat there, stunned. Because as much as I'd wanted closure, this wasn't it. This was something messier. This was the kind of letter that opens a door you thought you'd sealed shut. And I didn't know if I wanted to walk through it. The next day, I drove to the lake. No destination in mind, just asphalt and time. The weather was warm for spring, and the breeze off the water made everything feel easier to breathe. I found a spot near a dock and sat down, legs dangling above the water. I took out the letter again. Read it twice. Then folded it back up and slid it into my jacket. And then, out loud, to no one and everyone, I said, I forgive you, Emma. I meant it. Not for her. For me. Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It was time I stopped sipping. Later that week, I was at my favorite bookstore, one of those little indie shops with handwritten staff recommendations and mismatched chairs by the window. I was flipping through a novel when I heard a voice beside me. Try the Art of Stillness. Changed my life. I looked up. She was about my age. Dark curls, green eyes, a gentle voice that felt like a calm breeze. I smiled. That good. I read it in one sitting. Made me quit my job the next day. I laughed. That's a bold endorsement. I regret nothing, she said with a grin. I'm Ava. Daniel. We shook hands. She pointed to the book I was holding. That one's good too. But more of a slow burn. Like life, I said. She smiled at that. We talked for 20 minutes about books, the smell of old pages, and why bookstores feel like safe places. It wasn't a meet cute. There were no violins or sparks or magical moments. It was human. Simple. And maybe that was what I needed now. A reminder that connection doesn't have to come with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes with mutual respect and good conversation. Before I left, she handed me a sticky note with her number. If you ever want to talk about the book. Or life. I stared at it later that night, unsure what to do. But I saved it. That alone felt like progress. 1 week later, I saw Caleb. Not in some dramatic run-in. He was sitting at an outdoor cafe, scrolling through his phone, looking bored. Emma wasn't with him. He looked ordinary. Not like the men who'd torn my life in two. And that's when I realized, he never had that power. I'd given it to him. And now, I was taking it back. I didn't approach him. Didn't say a word. I just kept walking, head high, hands steady. Sometimes, dignity is the only closure you need. A few nights after that, my mom invited me to dinner again. Just her and Dad. No surprise guests this time. She made her famous lasagna, and Dad opened a bottle of red wine that was too expensive for a random Tuesday, but he insisted life was too short not to drink good wine. We ate slowly, talking about books, baseball, and how they were finally planning a trip to Italy. About halfway through, Mom leaned in and said, "You look lighter, Daniel." "I feel lighter." Dad raised his glass. "To letting go of people who never deserved you." I smiled and clinked his glass. "And to not letting one person ruin your entire idea of love." Mom looked proud. "I'm glad you're back," she said. "Even if it's a different version of you." I nodded. "Me too." That night, I took out the letter one last time. Read it in silence. Then folded it carefully and placed it in the back of my journal. Not to revisit, but to remember. Because pain, once understood, becomes part of your story. Not the whole story. Just a chapter. And I was finally ready to write the next one. A week after dinner at my parents' house, I finally texted Ava. It was simple. "Hey, I started The Art of Stillness." "You were right. It's good." I didn't expect much. Maybe a "glad you liked it." Maybe nothing. 10 minutes later, she replied. "Told you. You strike me as someone who doesn't sit still easily." I stared at that message longer than I should have. It felt accurate. Uncomfortably so. We chatted a little more. Books, music, and how she used to work in advertising before quitting to become a yoga instructor. It wasn't flirtatious. It was honest. Natural. We made plans to grab coffee that Friday. It wasn't a date. At least, that's what I told myself. But I spent too long choosing what to wear. When I got to the coffee shop, she was already there, reading. A paperback, pages curled at the edges like it had lived in her bag for months. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, you found me." "I'm nothing if not punctual," I joked, sliding into the seat across from her. "You're 5 minutes early." I grinned. "Okay, obsessively punctual." She ordered tea. I got black coffee. We talked about silence, cities, and the awkwardness of restarting your life in your 30s. Somewhere in the middle of our conversation, she asked, "So, what made you reach out?" I hesitated. It was the first time I'd had to say it out loud to someone who didn't already know. I came out of a marriage not too long ago. It ended badly. Publicly. She didn't flinch. Didn't ask for details. Instead, she said, "That takes guts." What does? To show up again. After something like that. I stared into my coffee. Then looked up. And for the first time in months, I smiled without effort. "Yeah," I said. "I guess it does." Over the next few weeks, Ava and I became something. Not quite a couple. But not strangers either. We met for coffee, walked through bookstores, went to a small jazz night she loved. She was kind. Curious. The kind of person who looked you in the eye and listened. And the more time we spent together, the more I realized just how loud the silence had been with Emma in our last year together. Ava asked questions that mattered. She didn't just ask how your day was, she asked how it felt. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't planned. About the betrayal. The dinner. The letter. Even about how I'd seen Caleb, sitting there like nothing had ever happened. "I thought I'd feel rage," I said once. But it was empty. She nodded, thoughtfully. Sometimes we think pain is an enemy. But I think the scariest thing is when we stop feeling anything at all. That night, walking her to her car, I almost kissed her. But I didn't. Because something wasn't settled yet. A few days later, I was at home when I got a knock at the door. Not a text. Not a call. A knock. When I opened it, I froze. It was Emma. Wearing a beige coat, eyes red, hair pulled back. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Daniel," she said softly. I know I shouldn't be here. No, you shouldn't. She swallowed. Can I talk to you? Just for 5 minutes. I crossed my arms. You already said everything in the letter. She nodded. I know. But I didn't come here to explain. I came to tell you something I think you need to hear. I hesitated. Then opened the door just enough to let her in. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the apartment like it belonged to someone else now. Maybe it did. We sat. She didn't touch anything. Didn't cry. She looked at me and said, Caleb left. 3 weeks ago. I blinked. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know it wasn't worth it. I lost you for a man who didn't even know how to love himself. I ruined the best thing I had for something that wasn't even real. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She continued, he said I was too complicated. Too dramatic. Too much. And I wanted to laugh, because you put up with so much more and never said a word. She looked down at her hands. I miss who I was when I was with you. I didn't know how good I had it until it was gone. I sighed, slow and deep. Emma, I'm not the same person anymore. I can see that. I spent months hating you. Then months trying not to. I let go of who we were. Of who I was. And I'm not going back there. I'm not asking you to. I looked her in the eye. Then why come? She paused. Then said the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Because I needed to see for myself that you were okay. That I didn't break you completely. I let that settle in. Then I said, you didn't break me. You broke us. But I picked myself up. And I'm okay. She nodded. Got up. I'm glad, she said. More than you know. And then she walked out of my apartment, and for the first time, I felt peace, not bitterness, in her absence. That night, I texted Ava. I want to tell you something. Something real. She called instead. Her voice was warm. Steady. I told her everything. The visit. What Emma said. How I didn't feel anything close to wanting her back. How I realized that some chapters need closure, not rewrites. There was silence for a moment. Then Ava said, you're ready, aren't you? For what? To let someone see all of you. Without the shadow of someone else standing behind you. I smiled. I think I am. A week later, I invited her to dinner at my parents' house. Ava. I was nervous, more than I expected. But when she walked in, my mom hugged her, and my dad poured her a glass of wine like she was already part of the family. At dinner, we laughed. Talked about everything and nothing. My mom pulled out baby photos, embarrassing ones, and Ava actually enjoyed them. After dessert, when everyone was too full to move, Ava took my hand under the table. Just held it. No pressure. No words. Just presence. I looked at her. She looked at me. And something inside me shifted. Not because I was falling for her. But because I wanted to. That night, we stood outside her car. She looked at me, brushing hair from her face. I like your family, she said. They like you. I like you, she added, quietly. I stepped closer. This time, I didn't hesitate. I kissed her. Soft. Simple. Real. No fireworks. Just warmth. And the quiet knowing that maybe, not today, not tomorrow, but maybe, this could be something real. They say healing isn't linear. That it's not a clean line from heartbreak to wholeness. And they're right. Because just when I thought I'd moved on, life reminded me that grief doesn't ask for permission before it shows up again. It happened one quiet Sunday morning. Ava was still asleep in my bed, curled up under the covers like a cat in sunlight. She had this way of looking completely at peace, even in the chaos of life. I got up early to make coffee and scrolled through my email while it brewed. And that's when I saw it. Subject, Caleb R., follow-up request. It was from a guy named Tim Saunders. Apparently, Caleb had applied for a job at a marketing firm, and they listed me as a professional reference. Me. I stared at the screen. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But no, my name was there. My email. My number. He'd listed me. The guy who slept with my wife wanted me to vouch for him. I stared out the window, mug warm in my hand, trying to make sense of it. I hadn't thought about Caleb in weeks. He was a ghost now. A cautionary tale. So why did this feel like a punch to the chest? I clicked reply, hands trembling a little. Hi Tim. I have no professional relationship with Mr. Caleb R. and cannot provide a reference. Best of luck. That was it. No anger. No story. Just truth. I closed the laptop and exhaled like I'd been holding that breath for 2 years. When I turned, Ava was leaning on the doorway, blanket wrapped around her like a robe. You okay? She asked, sleepy-voiced. Yeah, I said. Weird email. Nothing serious. She walked over, kissed my shoulder. I like this, she murmured, this life we're building. The quiet mornings. The coffee. I nodded. Me too. But something still stirred inside me. Not fear. Not rage. Something older. A memory I hadn't let myself visit in a while. Later that week, I drove past the old townhouse Emma and I used to live in. I don't know why. Closure, maybe. The blinds were different now. The paint a lighter shade. There were wind chimes hanging from the porch. New life. New people. We were ghosts here now. I parked across the street and just sat. Watching. I thought about all the things we dreamed inside those walls. The first nights on the hardwood floor with takeout. The arguments at 2 a.m. about nothing and everything. The days we laughed so hard we couldn't breathe. It wasn't all bad. And that was the hardest part. When people hurt you, it's easier to pretend it was all toxic. But real healing. It comes when you stop rewriting the past just to feel better in the present. It comes when you say, yes, we loved each other. Yes, it ended. And both those things can be true. 2 weeks later, Ava and I went hiking. Nothing dramatic. Just a trail outside the city, quiet and green, with dappled sunlight breaking through the trees. We sat at the top, looking out over the valley. And I told her everything. The house. The drive-by. The email. She listened. Always listening. When I finished, she took my hand. You don't owe anyone anything, she said. Not Emma. Not him. But you do owe yourself peace. I think I'm getting there. She smiled. You've already arrived. The rest is just furniture. We sat in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but full. Then she asked, do you still believe in love? The question didn't scare me anymore. Yeah, I said. But not the fairy tale kind. The kind where two people keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She squeezed my hand. That's the only kind that lasts. A few days later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a note, handwritten. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Emma. Daniel. I heard through a friend that you're doing well. I'm glad. Truly. I wanted to say thank you for not destroying me when you could have. For not making a public scene. For letting me walk away, even when I didn't deserve your grace. You didn't respond to my last letter. And that's okay. I'm not asking you to. But I hope, someday, you look back and remember that we were real. That I wasn't always cruel. That there was love. I'm in therapy now. Trying to rebuild. Not us, but me. Wishing you peace. Emma. I folded the note, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it into the drawer by the kitchen. I didn't need a reply. Because for once, I had nothing left to say. Months passed. Ava moved in. Not because we needed to prove something, but because we wanted to make space for each other in the daily ordinary. She filled my shelves with books and plants. I gave her the side of the bed closest to the window. She taught me how to breathe deeper. I taught her how to make perfect pancakes. It wasn't a movie. It was better. Because it was ours. One night, I told my parents I wanted to host Thanksgiving that year. At our place. They were surprised, pleasantly. That day, the table was full. My mom brought her signature stuffing. My dad cracked the same bad jokes. Ava made a wild rice salad I didn't think anyone would eat, but everyone devoured. There was laughter. No tension. No secrets. And at one point, after everyone had eaten, my dad raised his glass and said, "To new beginnings, and to knowing when to say goodbye to the wrong people so the right ones can finally walk through the door." Everyone clinked glasses. I looked at Ava. She smiled. And I realized, for the first time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't bracing for pain. I wasn't someone's backup. I was someone's choice. Later that night, as we lay in bed, Ava asked, "Do you ever miss her?" The question didn't sting. "No," I said honestly. "But I remember her. I remember what it felt like to want it to work so badly." She nodded. "That's fair. And I think," I added, "if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have recognized this. You." She rolled over and kissed me on the shoulder. "We're all a little broken." "Maybe," I said, "but some cracks let in the light. I'm not here to tell you that pain makes you stronger. Sometimes, pain just hurts. But I will say this. Getting betrayed didn't destroy me. It stripped away everything that wasn't real. And in the ashes, I found something better than revenge. I found truth. I found peace. I found a woman who looks at me like I'm the first chapter, not the epilogue. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real love looks like. Not a backup plan, but a beginning.